Course 3, Lesson 34, we are looking at proportions, especially in word problems, and being able to use our ratios to find missing information. So, first of all, we need to know the fact that a proportion is two equal ratios. So, things like 2/4 or 2 to 4 and 6 to 12 are equal, so they form a proportion. Now, there's a lot of ways that we can solve our proportion. So if we have 15 over 40 equals x over 8, well, one way that we could do this is seeing that, okay, 40 and 8 have a relationship, and if I do 8 times 5, it gets me 40. So something times 5 needs to get me 15. Well, x would have to be 3 to multiply by 5 to get 15. Okay, so we can see if there is a relationship between the ratios and use that to find missing information. Now, there's other ways too. We could do something like, in the second one, we could also see 4 times 12, or 4 times 3 is 12, so 7 times 3 is 21. Or we could use something like cross multiplication and see that, okay, 84 is equal to 4x. We divide by 4 and see that x is 21. Or lastly, we could see within a ratio, what does it need to equal? And a lot of times this helps, especially if we're able to get it down and simplify it quite a bit. So 12/24 is the same as 1/2. So the only way to make it equal to 1/2 is having it be 4 over 8. So x would have to equal 8. So we can look between ratios and see if there's a relationship, or within ratios and get an equivalent fraction, or we can use cross multiplication. Now, let's look at a word problem and decide, is this proportional? So Nora is paid $12 an hour. Is her pay proportional to the number of hours she works? How do you know? Well, let's figure out some different hour amounts and dollar amounts. So if she works for an hour, she gets $12. 2 hours is $24. 3 hours is 36, 4 is 48, and so on. So we can take a few of these and say, are these relationships proportional? And I would say, okay, 1/12, is that the same as 2 over 24? Or the same as 3 over 36? Or 4 over 48? And I would say, yes, all of these are equivalent. So yes, this is proportional because the ratios are the same. Now let's try another one. Nelson has a paper route, and if he works by himself, the job takes 60 minutes. So number of workers, 1, would be 60 minutes. So our ratio is 60 over 1. And then if 2 friends help him, if a second friend helps him, it takes 30 minutes. So 30 over 2. And if 3 friends altogether are helping, it takes 20 minutes. So we get 20 over 3. The question is this a proportional situation? And we would say, well, let's see if these ratios are the same. 60 over 1, is that the same as 30 over 2? Same as 20 over 3? And we would say no, because all of these reduce to 60 does not equal 15, which does not equal 20/3. Okay, which is about 6 2/3, right? Those are not the same, so this is not a proportional relationship. Okay, if we have 16 students and 9 are girls, 7 are boys, what's the ratio of girls to boys? Well, we would say that's 9 to 7. Or the ratio of boys to the class, we would say that's 7 to 16. And we could use those ratios to figure out how many students would be in the gym, how many girls would there be, boys, for 128 students. And what we're really doing is setting up a proportion, saying, okay, if there are 7 out of 16 boys, that needs to equal a certain amount of boys out of the total. And I could cross multiply and solve or see the relationship between 16 and 128. And I could do the same with the girls. 9 over 16 is equal to x over 128. And then Mr. Cerny was driving to Kansas. He drove for 450 miles and for 8 hours. How long would it take him to drive 800 miles? Assuming that this relationship is proportional, we can set up a proportion to say, okay, he went 450 miles in 8 hours. So that needs to be the same rate and ratio as 800 miles to a certain amount of hours. And this is a good one to cross multiply so that we get 6,400 equaling 450x. We divide by 450 on each side. And I believe we get something like 14.2 repeating hours is x. So it would take him about 14.2 repeating hours to get those 800 miles. Here's a few more practice problems. Okay, to check and use those skills to do the proportions and look at our tables and situations to decide if they are proportional. Well, I hope this is helpful for your homework and for studying.